Whether it's filling your social media feeds or not, the Black Lives Matter movement is still raging and it still needs your help.
Please consider donating to any Black Lives Matter causes you can, because we still have a long way to go towards a better future for all of us.
Donation links are provided below our description. Please check them out and consider donating. We hope you will. Thank you. And now, this week's episode. Just like all the Fast and Furious movies, this episode contains spoilers.
Twinema. Cinema.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Twinema Cinema.
Yes, my friends and enemies? Are enemies listening to our show?
I certainly hope so. They need to stay informed of our activities.
Thank you all so much for listening, and guess what? We're coming back again with a new episode, and this time we're talking about pigs.
Yep, we are prepared to go fully ham for you.
Excellent. Yes, instead of turkey this week, we're getting you with ham, the second most popular Thanksgiving meat, from my understanding.
That is my understanding as well, and it is a delicious understanding as we are going to be talking about Babe and Gordy.
Woo-hoo. It's funny because I've seen Gordy more times. I know this. I technically know this, but I don't remember what the movie's about. It's the weirdest thing. It's like a gap. I remember seeing a pig, but I don't remember the movie.
I remember seeing Gordy once and only once, and that is all I've seen of him. Babe, it's been a couple times because I remember actually seeing that one in a theater.
You saw Babe in a theater?
Oh yeah, it was 95, so Mom must have taken me.
You know what? Sometimes you win. Sometimes you get the luck of the draw. Sometimes you don't. And this time, I think I got to give you advantage.
Ooh. Does that mean I get the prime cuts?
God, I hope that they didn't kill either of these pigs for meat. They're special pigs.
I mean, they certainly didn't plan on it, but when the catering guy didn't show up one day.
Okay. I wonder, if you become an adult pig, like a sentient talking pig, do you just donate your body for food when you get old and gray? Is that an option?
I mean, if you're fully aware of yourself, it's possible you could do that. But I don't know if these pigs were that smart. But I honestly don't remember any level of their intellect whatsoever from these films.
Well, I know at the very least that Babe is fully aware that they're gonna kill him.
It's true. And Gordy is aware that his name is Gordy. That's all I got.
I really don't remember that movie. It's so weird. I know that I've seen it a bunch of times. I feel like Gordy, he's like a mascot of some kind. Actually, that's what we should go into right now. We should talk about
What Can You Remember? And to be honest, I don't remember a whole lot about either of these movies, but as much as I remember about Babe, I remember even less about Gordy. In fact, the only thing I remember about Gordy is that he actually talks, like the boy he hangs around with can actually hear him. And I don't know if it's just like a unique thing between him and the boy, or if every human can understand this pig.
See, I don't remember that either, but I was pretty sure that Gordy actually talks to somebody. So that's good. Good to know that I'm not alone, and that is probably what happens in the movie. I feel like Gordy becomes like a mascot or something for a business, but I don't know if that's true. Maybe it's one of those things like in the Muppet movie where it's a bacon company that's trying to get Gordy to be the mascot.
Oh, man, yeah, they have to run away from Doc Bacon.
What's his name in the Muppet movie?
Doc Hopper.
That's okay. So it is Hopper. That's what I thought, but I wasn't totally sure. Fried frog legs.
Charles Durning killed me in the movie. It's like, hi, I'm Doc Hopper.
I just love that they chase a frog all the way across the country to get him to be their mascot. It's a brilliant movie, but we're not going to talk about the Muppet movie anymore. We're going back to Talking Pigs, which has no relation in any way to any Muppets.
Wait a minute.
We're moving past this, Max.
No. Okay, so You saw Gordy more, so tell me, what's Babe about?
Oh, perfect, because I actually remember Babe quite well.
Well, then, no, I'll describe... No, I don't know.
I think we have to as a team. I think we've done the best we can describe about Gordy, because I don't fucking know.
Here's what I want Gordy to be about. This is a sentient, self-aware porcine, so he is bound for global domination.
Okay.
Eventually, through the help of this boy he's unwittingly conned, he is going to seek the highest office in the land and become president of these United States.
That's a hell of a movie. I feel like that's not what happened, but maybe it
You remember the last 4 years? Tell me I'm wrong.
Well, Babe, on the other hand, I do remember what Babe is about. It is about a pig that becomes and is kind of raised by some sheepdogs. I think that's what they're called, right? Those dogs that herd sheep? Sheepdogs? It seems like it checks out. I'm going to stick with that.
Dogs that herd sheep, dogs. Yeah, that checks out.
So anyhow, this pig is taken in by the sheepdogs, and the sheepdogs raise him. And guess what? In order to make sure that he is worthwhile and doesn't get himself killed as they discover that he's going to die and he realizes that he's bound for the dinner table, he takes up the skills of learning how to herd sheep. And you know what? Somehow, I have no idea how they get to this point, actually. They end up in a sheepdog competition. Oh, shit. I remember now. Okay, so he becomes friends with the sheep, and they listen to him because they like him. And then it's this one old sheep who teaches him the secret word in order that all sheep communicate with, because in the sheepdog herding competition, you don't get to herd your own sheep. You have to herd a different herd of sheep. So then Babe is like, how do I do this? And then the sheep is like, you need to know the word. Ba, ram, you. It's so beautiful.
That'll do, Joey. That'll do.
And that happens.
And then James Cromwell dances at some point, and when you know it, it becomes a Best Picture nominee.
Babe's nominated for Best Picture?
Yes.
If I remember correctly, it totally deserves it. And I am now even more excited to go back and rewatch this thing, because obviously I'm missing a lot of pieces.
Let's see. Well, you have the shank and the prime portion, the prime cuts, and then you have the feet, which you pickle.
God.
Oh, you weren't talking about that, were you?
No, I wasn't, Max. I was not talking about the meat cuts of a pig, but I think you were pretty accurate right there. I don't know all of the deals, but it sounded tasty.
Sounds like some pig.
That's some pig.
But that is not even the right movie, but it's pig related, so we'll take it.
I mean, clearly Charlotte's Web is a precursor in some ways to these movies.
But that's kind of what we remember of these movies, or at least what we'd hope they would be. And time will tell if we're correct, because Lord knows, for our Thanksgiving meal, we would not actually want a talking pig. That is the last thing you want, your meal talking back to you.
Yeah. Man, would you feel bad at that point? I feel like I'd have to feel bad. You know, if I just like with Toy Story, if you found out your toys could talk, and after all the shit you did to your toys.
Like, wait, what shit did you do to your toys?
Did you not melt any of your toys?
Oh. Joey, no.
I didn't do anything gross. I just.
What are you apologizing for?
I murdered some toys, okay? That's what happened.
Well, with that, we're going to be back in 4.5 hours.
See you guys soon.
See you for leftovers.
These week's films can be found streaming at these following locations. We've got Babe streaming on HBO Max.
And we got Gordy streaming wherever you can rent fine streamable films.
Yeah, we didn't really expect Gordy to be streaming anywhere, and we were correct.
So you're going to have to pay for it if you want to watch it in more ways than one.
I love coffee. Do you love coffee? I love coffee too. You know what else coffee can do? It can help us keep this podcast going. So if you go to coffee.com/twinimacinema, ko-fi.com/twinimacinema, you can give us coffee or money coffee or coffee money. Oh man, we should pay with beans. Anyway, coffee.com/twinimacinema. Help us out. Thanks. Bye.
Gordy, take care of the family.
When I first came to the boss's farm, it was a whole new world to me.
Lost his family. Oh? Took him away.
Where is everybody? I want my mom.
Good heavens.
Who are you?
I could have sworn I heard you say something. That's right, you did. People can understand animals if they take the time to listen.
What are you? You pig. What are you? I'm a you. A you. You look like an intelligent young fella. Who, me?
Get him up, pig.
Boy, I bet his IQ's as high as mine.
Remember, you have to dominate them. Bend them to your will.
You signed Gordy to a lifetime contract.
If a pig can make it, anyone can.
Get out of here, you big butthead. What a nice little pig.
Give me a goodnight kiss. That was a sweet kiss.
Whack-a-doodle-doo, dear listeners, and happy Thanksgiving morning. We are back from our 4.5-hour piggy sojourn, and we're here to talk about it with you.
Indeed, I'm getting excited for my turkey this evening, afternoon time. But this week, we are talking about the second most popular Thanksgiving item,
Tofu.
ham.
Oh, ham.
Well, I guess tofu's probably gaining on it. You know, there's a lot of vegetarians, a lot of vegans out there these days. But I prefer turkey. Ham's more of a Christmas meat for me.
It's true, and it's a Christmas meat in Babe as well.
So let's just get right into these two movies here, Max. Obviously, right off the top, when you're looking at these two movies, there's a number of similarities. So let's just start things right off here and get into these similarities.
Then right off the bat, our poor hero Piggy loses his parents, or one of his parents at least. And Babe, I don't think their dad was a factor.
Yeah, see, I didn't expect these movies to start out like Batman, but you know, that is the vibe we're going for. Just right in the gut, right in the feelings, right at the beginning.
Oh man, that would have been a crazy movie if we got Bat Pig.
You know what? It worked pretty well for Spider Pig, so maybe Bat Pig would be a nice movie.
He does do whatever a Spider Pig does. And not only do we have our poor piggies losing their parental units, it's interrupted by interspersed narration from a narrator who's not even there the whole time.
It was incredibly confusing in Gordy because in Babe, I remembered there being some kind of narration. In Gordy, I didn't think that was a thing at all, but it shows up. It's like the first voice you hear in the movie is this narrator.
It's a very soothing narrator at that.
Yeah, but then they disappear for almost the entire runtime of the movie. I think they come back just for the end. And so it was very unexpected. But we do have it in both of the movies, which was a similarity that I honestly didn't expect.
And I don't know if it was exactly needed, although it was a little more welcome in Babe, since it was more of a storybook anyway.
It's more fitting in Babe just because of the style of that film. In Gordy, it kind of just literally comes out of left field and just completely caught me off guard. And it doesn't make any sense. As I was watching Gordy, as the narration happened, I couldn't connect the dots very well because of the simple fact that the narrator is not doing anything other than describing the visuals we're seeing. They did not add anything to the movie.
It's like, we already know this narrator.
Exactly. Why are you here? Who did you bribe to get the narration in this movie so you could get some VO work?
I'm guessing it was probably a relation of Luke the country singer.
Very well could be. Maybe Luke's manager just really wanted to get in on it.
It's either that or cousin Jake, who's just, the hero of the movie.
Well, that's enough talking about Gordy. Let's get back to our similarities here.
There's one, fairly obvious one. There's talking pigs.
Talking pigs. It's kind of the whole reason why we're talking about these two movies together is because of the talking pigs. There is a bit of a difference in the nature of these talking pigs. In Babe, the talking pig is only talking to other animals. In Gordy, he can talk to humans.
But they just have to listen, Joey.
They have to be pure of heart and listen. Or I think they called cousin Jake simple-minded at some point. They said, Gordy actually says, I can't tell if he's pure of heart or just simple-minded. And I just when that happened, I just couldn't believe it. I'm like, oh my God, that's a
piggy burn.
Yeah.
But even then, I think they kind of dropped the rules at some point, because I think the country singer hears him at some points, and maybe the mom. It loses itself after a while.
seems that if you have corporate greed, you can't hear pigs talk. I think that's the key element.
Sounds about right.
And so in each of these movies, we have our talking pigs. They have lost their parents, and they also are pigs. And what are pigs good for, Max?
I was gonna say pinning the tail on for birthday parties, but that's a donkey.
They've got a cool tail. It would probably work really well with a pig instead of a donkey.
It's like it'd be all swirly and cute and much more difficult. But I'm gonna say they taste delicious.
Oh, you are correct, sir. Pigs are for eating. And because of that, each of these movies have a plot line where the pigs are being sent to, quote unquote, the meat house, as dubbed by Max earlier today, and I couldn't stop laughing at this phrase meat house.
Yeah, as the parents get taken away, our humble porcine narrators and ne'er-do-wells narrowly avoid the similar fate by either just being out of the room at the time or chosen for a game of chance at a county fair.
They both just escape because of circumstance, which that's how most people escape dire situations. You're just in the right place at the right time.
I was just say random dumb luck.
Yeah, same thing.
And then once safely out of the midst of the meat house, they endear themselves to a human. And in this case, a human male.
And the affection goes both ways. Immediately in both movies, we see that the connection isn't just one directional. There's some kind of connection between the two that just brings them together as if they're meant to be.
Like, yeah, the narrator in Babe called it a common destiny.
I guess so. It's true in terms of how they relate and work together. It's so much more grand in that phrasing than it necessarily is in the reality. And I think that's really fun. And that's one of the major charms of Babe is everything is much bigger than the story itself.
And it has to be true because the narrator said it. And then I just want to talk about the meat houses. In both cases, they are frightening places.
It's very much structured in such a way as to bring that fear into your soul. I would say that one of the memories that I have of Gordy specifically from being a kid was this crazy, I think, like you said, pig detention facility. It's like a prison, and it's got a big scary metal fan, big scary metal fans, man.
Like Ridley Scott devised this detention facility for pigs. Like there's a whole bunch of moving parts, including fans that have no relevance to meat processing. It's terrifying.
And in Babe, it's very much it's reminiscent to me of the shack in Twister.
I was gonna say this has to be designed by Terry Gilliam. It's very dystopian.
But I think they do such a great job in Babe of showcasing the aura of that building, because not even the dogs want to go into it. They chase Babe into it, and then the moment they cross the threshold, the scent, the vibe, it just scares them away, and so they don't go in there. So it's also the perfect hiding place for Ferdinand, the lovable duck.
And this is just referring to the kill shack in Babe, right?
Yeah. Which I guess that's what I thought we were talking about.
I thought we were just talking about the facilities. Like at the very beginning of Babe and the very end of Gordy.
Gotcha. Well, my apologies.
Well, no, I mean, you're right.
But you are also right that the beginning, that crazy facility in Babe definitely reminded me a lot of the imagery in A Brave New World, because it's just all of these people that are just being bred into existence. And it kind of worked on a lot of people who watched the movie, because apparently there was a 20% decrease in pork sales in the United States after the release of Babe. So it hit home for a lot of people.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think that was entirely on purpose as well, as both of these movies are definitely anti-meat. Maybe not vehemently, but it was probably in the back of their minds when they were creating the story.
There's no way you can avoid that in either of the movies when your protagonist is basically food. It's gonna come up, especially, I mean, in both movies, really, because that is the plot line for Gordy's parents. They're going to a meat factory. They're going up north And I like that, actually. That's another similarity in both movies, is they reference leaving the home at the beginning as they're going to a place that nobody knows what happens, but that's where pigs go.
So on their level of existence, they could be going to heaven for all they know.
Yeah, exactly. They're going to the farm, just like many, many dogs.
But yeah, upstate. But yeah, whereas the parents get sent to a meat house, our pig goes on to a meet cute.
Oh, that's good. Well played.
The boy in Gordy and Farmer Hoggett and Babe both fall in love with this little piggy. They become soulmates at that point, which is all kinds of adorable to varying degrees.
I really enjoy the meet cute in Babe more because in Gordy we've got a double type situation. We have the meet cute with a side character who then leads Gordy to his real home, which, as I think about it, as we were talking about before, it does seem like they just kind of stuck that plot line in there to get more screen time for certain actors.
I would heartily agree with that assessment. But I think the real big commonality between these movies, as they're both ostensibly kids' movies.
On the surface, it's definitely how it feels. We play the pigs as children. They are young people, so it's all told from their perspective, or in some cases with like Babe more specifically, we have an omniscient narrator and point of view where we see a little more that's happening. But they are, I feel, intended for kids. Although one of the two is definitely more a kids movie through and through, whereas the other hits on a whole nother level.
And in that case, it's kind of one of my favorite ways of categorizing cinema. One of them is a kids movie. The other is a kids film.
I've always contested you on this phrasing, but I understand the meaning, and I think most people can get it right off the bat. But have you elaborated on the podcast before on your specific terminology?
I have not. I don't think I've ever actually used that particular terminology thus far, but it's kind of a personal thing, if anything. It's basically just defining a movie or a film by its level of art house value, its messaging, its quality, and if it will be remembered.
And so that goes into one of the obvious differences here in the movies is just the tone and the depth to which they tell their stories. Gordy's so ridiculous. Babe, they're both about talking pigs. Okay, so first off, it's gonna be a little fantasy world. That's just how it is. But Gordy becomes the CEO of a $1 billion company. Like, that's part of the plot line of the movie. So it just, for a movie about talking pigs, we take such a hard left into this complete unbelievable reality that it has to be a kid's movie. It has to play on that level because as an adult, you can't accept it. That's breaking the world so strongly.
Whereas the most ridiculous thing in Babe is he becomes a sheep pig and he proves everyone wrong in the process, which is just all kinds of adorable. But along with that, there's also crazy, kid antics that happens, like when he gets in a fight with the cat and there's paint everywhere and there's a duck for some reason. And then to go along with the silliness, there is crazy existential crisis.
I think that's a huge part right there, is that the silliness or the crazy things that happen occur because of this child pig being in this world. It's not the adults who are acting crazy. It's not the other animals that are out there doing strange, weird things other than the duck. But that's also a very cute story, and it fits very much along in Babe's journey of kind of turning the world on their head and doing something that no one expects of you. So I think it works very well. That story flows well. But all of the other characters in Babe are part of this world. They are acting as you would imagine them to act. In Gordy, all of these things just kind of keep happening, and it just doesn't make a whole lot of sense.
Yeah, that's kind of the tone throughout the entire thing, and it doesn't really change throughout. I almost want to say there's almost a nihilistic quality to Babe, as all of the animals, like, they're very aware they will die in their station in life, and only through Babe's naivete do they even have an inkling of what could be if they tried hard enough. Whereas I legitimately think everyone in Gordy might be insane.
I mean, even just the way that Gordy is shot and then the way that some of the actors play things, it really doesn't help. They do seem to be crazy. And speaking of insane, let's talk about the differences here in one of our favorite segments called
History, Facts, and Box Office. Yeah, we kind of have to jump the gun a little bit because there's only so long we can put off talking about the quality of these films and movies. It's another one of those standard things. One of these was wildly successful and the other one was Gordy. Yeah, Gordy did not do that well, but it was kind of doomed from the start. As start to finish, this movie kind of was just put together in a couple of months.
Oh, that's interesting. I didn't know that. Let's start off with like the timeline of the stories.
Babe had pre-existing IP. It was based off of a children's story that George Miller, famous guy in Australia, who is the father of Mad Max, one of my personal favorite heroes. Not Mel Gibson, just the character. But yeah, so he and Chris Noonan, the director, basically had to wait decades for technology to catch up so they could actually make this story.
Okay. So it's one of those things that they had the idea for a very long time, and they just kind of needed things to catch up in order for it to look good enough to meet their standards.
Exactly. And Gordy, they just had to make sure they had enough peanut butter to put in the animals' mouths.
It's true. That's a pretty solid difference that we could have talked about, is simply that Babe uses some effects and we actually have physically talking animals. We see the mouths move. And in Gordy, we do have their mouths move, but we use the Mr. Ed strategy of just capturing them long enough and getting them to make their noises, and then we can just overdub them.
Yeah, it's kind of lazy now that I think about it. But Gordy went before cameras in August 94 and actually had its first showing at the Tucson Film Festival in November. So they put that together very quickly, if the internet is to be believed on that one. However, Babe went before cameras in April 94 and was released in August 95. Gordy was released domestically a little bit before that in the summer. Gordy was the first on the market, but was completely eclipsed later by Babe.
Speaking of getting to the market, let's hear what those numbers are. Because you said one of them blew the other out of the water. I want to know by how much. I want to know how bad of a thumping Gordy took at the box office.
Okay, well, how much would you say that Gordy made?
Okay, how much do we think it made? I'm going to venture a guess, because I really think it didn't make a lot of money. I'm going to put it like in the category of like a Heavyweights and Camp Nowhere. So I'm going to say it made like $12 million.
Okay, wow, did you overshoot it? Bob Barker would be disappointed.
I didn't know we were playing The Price is Right. Had I known that, I would have guessed much lower.
Everything is Price is Right rules. It's life. It made $3.9 million.
Ooh, that's gotta be our lowest.
That is it. It wasn't even released internationally.
Well, I feel like it probably wouldn't have a very good international market, but you never know. So $3.9 million. That is low.
And Babe, on the other hand, had quite a good day at market. Made $63.6 million domestically and $190 internationally, bringing it up to $254 million worldwide.
That's awesome. I mean, that makes sense then. Like, because if that many people saw it, that would explain why that 20% drop in the pork market happened. That's pretty crazy.
Everyone saw this movie.
I mean, we definitely did, but it seems like everyone else did too. Okay, so we got their box office numbers, but what was the budget of these movies? Because I imagine it's pretty different. Just based on the look of the movies, Babe had to have had a higher budget than Gordy. If it didn't, I want to know who was in charge of giving Gordy money, and I want to talk to them to give me money.
Well, I was able to find Babe's budget, and like most great movies, it didn't take that much to make, respectively, or by, huge blockbuster numbers. It cost $30 million to make.
Okay. So yeah, 30 Well, I mean, 30 with that kind of box office return is an insanely good investment, but it makes a little bit of sense. But at the same time, they stretched that budget pretty darn far.
And then I couldn't find anything for Gordy, but you have to imagine it was done for less to less than stellar results.
That's the kind of movie that just looking at it, you can tell that it didn't have an insane budget, but at the same time, there's some pretty expansive things that do happen in there, and they got some pretty big stars. Bill Clinton makes an appearance.
Yeah, I don't know how to tell you this, Joey. I don't think that was the real Bill Clinton.
Oh, I mean, I was kind of hoping that it was because the movie takes place in Arkansas, right? So I figured maybe it is Bill Clinton, former governor of Arkansas.
Yeah, it starts in Arkansas, but it ends in apparently the country music capital of the world, Branson, Missouri.
I mean, I'm pretty sure, Max, that was a joke. I'm 99%
I don't
sure.
think it was. The whole thing.
I think
it filmed in Branson. There was Branson money involved. That was a serious plug.
Well, it was a good plug, but I still think it was a joke because we all know that the country music capital of the world is
Des Moines, Iowa.
I mean, I assume it's Nashville. Like that would be my assumption, but maybe it's Des Moines. I don't know country music well enough, Max.
No, I think it was legitimate, even though obviously Nashville is the capital of country music. But I feel like that was just, yeah, we're going to try to convince people here. This was some gaslighting stuff going on.
Well, you know what? It didn't work. So they tried, they failed, and we don't have their box office numbers. So let's move on to the critics. What did the critics think, Max? Tell me that Gordy has some redeeming critics.
Well, I mean, the fact that it has no ratings whatsoever on Metacritic should probably tell you.
Oh, no.
And it is not our lowest as far as Rotten Tomatoes is concerned, but it's
Really?
pretty down there. Critically, 26%. Audience, 24%.
Ooh, that's pretty low.
It's telling because the audience liked it less than the critics.
Yeah, that doesn't happen. Actually, that might be the first time it's been an inverse for us, really.
Universal praise for Babe. Critically on Rotten Tomatoes, you got 97%. Audience, 67%.
What? Audience is crazy.
It's true, but I will say, it might not even be a thing, but there was over 500,000 audience reviews of Babe on Rotten Tomatoes.
Oh, shoot. That's a lot.
It is. That is the kind of stuff you reserve for like Avengers movies. Although I found out that Avengers Endgame only has 70,000 audience reviews.
That's crazy. So Babe has, okay, yeah. So with you having that many audience reviews, it's definitely going to be a little bit more indicative of how the world saw the movie. And when you do that, you're going to have a wide variety of people's opinions. But 97% is an insane critic review.
Yeah, Metacritic had it at 83 out of 100. Users was 7.7 out of 10. So it's a little more modest on Metacritic, which is about right, I think. Because, you know, any movie that wasn't released in the age of the internet, I automatically have suspicions of their critical scores just because there aren't as many reviews available to tabulate.
Exactly. And that's one of the problems with like sites like Rotten Tomatoes and Metacritic is just simply that they came about later, you know? So they just don't have all the information from that original time, from the original release of the movies. But we still use it because it's the best thing that we can easily access, and it's fun. I like looking at the numbers, crunching the numbers, comparing the numbers. I think it's a good time.
And you can usually tell when there's either trolls involved or when the critics are just wrong.
And sometimes they are, but I think it's about time for us to go into our next section, which is going to be...
Winner, winner, who's the winner? So yeah, I think on this one, we're probably going to end up going a little long because we've held off our true opinions of these movies, you know, for the most part. But I think we could safely say that Gordy, well, it stunk on ice.
Yes, the winner this week is a resounding Babe. It's not even remotely close. For me, these are easily the biggest disparity between the quality of the movies that we've reviewed. Babe is in an upper echelon of our movies, and Gordy is probably the worst movie we've watched for the podcast.
Yeah, one clearly sizzled, the other one definitely fizzled.
Hey!
Bacon reference.
So I think for me, I'm kind of stuck in this category of Babe being it's definitely a 9, maybe a 10. Where do you put your rating for Babe, Max?
Like this is one of those that could be classified as a perfect movie, even though it may not be a perfect movie, but literally I don't find a flaw with it at all. There's no flaws.
Excellent. And that's kind of where I'm at, is it's not necessarily there for me, but it is right there. It's right on the door. Where Gordy, it's okay. It's an okay movie for a kid's movie. But as an adult, there are just so very many problems with this movie. It's just not good. There's nothing about it that is good, or even like, or there, well, let me rephrase that here. There's nothing about it that's great. You know, there are some things that are good, but there is nothing in it that is great. And I think that's really holds it back. Even in some of our other movies, there are great moments. Gordy just doesn't have anything great.
Yeah, and I think the only thing that could be considered great is the fact that it isn't great. There is a cringe watch quality to the movie. It gets to a bad level, almost to where it is just ridiculous to watch. It forgets its own rules half the time. You get rambling segues into nothingness, and it just doesn't make sense half the time. For instance, when Gordy is starting to get all famous and he's doing commercials, there's this ridiculous scene where he's doing kids' product commercials, and this weird thing about, oh no, we have to sabotage the pig by changing out the lens to make him look ridiculous.
It just doesn't make sense because, you know, we're filmmakers ourselves, and we've seen a bajillion movies, and there's no way that the camera operator or the DP isn't going to notice that you switched the lens, especially switching to a wide angle lens to make the pig look bad. It's just, he's a pig. You know, he looks like a pig. There are some plot points in this movie that just don't really make sense. It's in an absurd category. It's a movie. It's a kid's movie. And it exists. You could just tell that there isn't a whole lot of depth to the story either. They're kind of just writing things to get to the plot points that they need to get to. So, okay, we have this villain and this pig is coming up and we want the villain to win in this moment. How can we subvert that? Well, we're going to switch the lens. That's what we're going to do. Okay, cool.
Although I just had to comment on the villain, as he is, you know, a villain of the 80s broken into the 90s, as did happen in the early 90s. And he is just a psychopath. He never raises his voice. He is a corporate weasel with a corporate weasel hairdo. He just bothered me so much.
He's very unsettling, and everyone goes along with him. And that's also unsettling in another way. They just accept this as being normal. And I mean, him and all of the other adult actors in the movie are just overplaying every single scene, that it's kind of frustrating. It's just, it's like they know they're making a movie, and I just don't think most of them are actors either, or weren't actors beforehand. So the kids actually do a pretty good job. I think the kids are the shining part of this movie. The kids and the animals. The animals did a pretty good job of acting. I'll give it to the animals. But the kids, they're believable. I think they're not the best child actors that have ever existed, but they fit into this movie where the parents don't. The adults don't, with the exception of like his grandpa. I think his grandpa plays old curmudgeon CEO pretty effectively. Matter of fact, he shuts down his daughter so hard at one point where he's just like, sorry, it's got to be the pig. The pig's the face of the campaign, not you. And that kind of made me really happy because it just like took a big dump on nepotism. He was like, nope, daughter, you don't get anything. But then in the movie, the grandpa dies. Sad moment for everyone. But the grandpa, so instead of giving his like $1 billion company to his daughter to run, you know, instead of giving it to his daughter because she chose a different career path, is what I think he said in his will, he gives it to his grandson, who obviously is like, what, like 10 at the oldest? He's just a little dude. And so he can't run the company. And then instead of giving it to his mom in trust in order to run the company for him, he gives it to the pig. He gives it to Gordy. How is a pig supposed to hold a company accountable and be the CEO of a company until your son or until your grandson becomes of age? How? And so then from that point on, the rest of the plot of the movie is we have to get rid of this pig. And
You know, in that case, he's really going to have to take advantage of the pork belly market.
I hate you. Well, the other thing that's so crazy that I couldn't stop thinking about is this movie in so many ways is similar to the B plot line of the Muppet movie, except instead of Kermit refusing to be the face of this company, Gordy's all on board. But of course, then they eventually find out that they own a pork processing plant, and Gordy, he don't like that.
Well, also, it just conveniently happens to be the one his parents are being kept at for, I guess we have to assume, weeks at a time, because we don't know the actual timeline of this movie. So his parents were taken away and just kept in a pen for months instead of being processed at this pork facility. And they also seem to be the only ones. They're the only pigs in Omaha.
Yeah, I didn't think about that, but now that you say it, it's totally true. There are no other pigs in the entire movie.
There's more humans in that plant than pigs.
I didn't think about that at all. In the opening of Babe, there's more pigs than there are in the entire movie Gordy.
And Gordy, it was on the verge of being a competent plot half the time. Like, I think the best comparison I could think of was Pee-wee's Big Adventure. Pee-wee goes from scene to scene, city to city, and he meets new and fascinating characters along the way. This almost seemed like is what they were going to do with the little girl country singer first, and then the little boy who's lonely, and it could have kept going like that. But no, we just stepped with those two characters, and it stopped developing altogether.
And then we also, like the little girl is the daughter of a country singer, and so we have to have a Blues Brothers-esque plot line going through this too, where they're just traveling around the country playing music, and then Gordy's got to show up and save the day because he's the most famous pig in the world, so he helps sell tickets, I think was the plot line there. But then we actually have real performers, which is kind of really cool. I like that.
Although no one of note, like I had never heard of any of those performers, because they must be the most famous country singers in Branson, Missouri.
Well, I would say, the performer of note that I recognized immediately was Roy Clark. But even with him and the other actors, or not the other actors, the other country singers, the other performers, they're all, kind of more past their prime at this point. This isn't their heyday. Honestly, that's one of the highlights of the movie is the country performances are pretty good. They all can sing. All of the musical numbers, they work pretty well. We're not talking like blowing me out of the water moments in the movie, but individually as standalone songs, I like it. I like what they did there. So they kind of fit that in pretty well.
Although honestly, I think this whole movie might just be a vehicle for Doug Stone, who's credited with pretty much like 3/4 of all the songs in the movie.
It makes sense. I actually looked up his career a little bit, and he had some pretty good success right before this movie. And so I almost feel like it had the opposite effect, that it might have been this movie that it was his downfall, which seems to be the downfall of everyone involved in the movie. Because on IMDb, one of their trivia items is almost no one from this movie worked in movies ever again.
It's like, I feel, it's tough to say. I almost feel like we're better off for it, but that's a mean thing to say.
Well, I think probably what happened, to some extent anyhow, is the reason we don't know the budget for this movie is I think a bunch of people got swindled. I think they pitched it, they made the movie, and they ran with the money. And so that's why we don't actually know what the budget for this was, because it almost feels like a producer's-esque scandal.
Well, considering this masterpiece of piggery comes from the Weinsteins, it's not too hard to imagine.
We got to move on from shitting on Gordy now and talk about this masterpiece that is Babe.
I just kind of what I have to mention up front when we're talking about Babe. What they do with animals is incredible. Like via the use of real animals and really good Jim Henson puppetry. They do a better job of making animals seem like they have human emotions, way better than the CG Lion King ever could even dream of doing.
And we can't forget that there's also some incredible visual effects on top of that too, which they won an Oscar for because it was Rhythm and Hughes, who would go on to win an Oscar for their visual effects in Babe, who would go on to win an Oscar for their visual effects in Life of Pi, and then also in one other movie that I am just not able to think of at the moment.
Well, they were fairly prominent in the 90s, although Life of Pi kind of killed them because for some reason, dumb studios don't pay their visual effects artists what they deserve.
Yeah, and when you look at Life of Pi specifically, that whole movie relies on those visual effects. And for Babe, I guess this was more in its infancy as a company, but without them, this movie doesn't look the same. It just doesn't work on that level because they do all of the mouth effects. They did all of the effects where we're not using puppets to get these animal emotions, to get them speaking.
And they accomplish it wildly successfully using what I call the Jurassic Park method, was competently switching out between, your CG manipulation and puppets. And you do it so often and so well that you don't know which is which half the time, and that's how you buy it.
A lot of it just generally comes down to quality of filmmakers involved. How experienced are they with the technology that's being used, how they tell their story, how they choose to tell the story, and they know when something isn't going to look quite right. And they also, they're so aware of the final product that they can anticipate, oh, this won't work here because audiences simply won't buy it. And there's a lot of special effects and visual effects in Babe, but it's also one of those movies that it's not so bombastic about it. It is very subtle. It's important. It's integral. You couldn't make this movie without it, but at the same time, it's not in your face the whole time. And because of that, it really works.
There's just something deeper to it as well. And I credit a lot of that to the score, which was kind of like a piece from Carnival of the Animals adapted by Nigel Westlake. It kind of imbues the animals and the story with their own soul, which impacts it immensely compared to Gordy.
I do believe that is certainly a part of it. The score is excellent, but you can't deny the incredible voice acting talent in this movie and how good of a job they do, but also James Cromwell, who is nominated for an Oscar for this movie, his only Oscar nomination, which from what I understand, he actually paid for his own Oscar campaign because nobody else would for this movie, which I think is both awesome and sad because he's so good. But him and the performance that he brings to it just adds this other level. Because of him, everything that we see a little bit through his lens, and he's like the straight man for this movie. It's not much of a comedy. It's more of a drama in a lot of ways, but there's comedic moments. But he gives us this plane through which to view everything. And I think it's like one of the reasons why he took this role was because it has the least amount of lines of any movie that he had done up until this point. So he took it because he thought it would be easier. Then when filming actually begins, it's the most screen time that he had ever had in a movie up until this point. So it's just like he picked it for the wrong reasons, but without him, it doesn't work. His moment when he's dancing for Babe to bring Babe back to life, to bring him that energy, it's such pure joy. It's such an amazing moment that I was just elated during the movie. And then he's even slightly embarrassed by it because the other animals are watching, but then he's like, I don't care. This is just an expression of who I am. And that moment just kind of brings everything to a whole nother level where everyone cares about Babe. You just see that everyone's on his side.
And it's just the connection between the two characters as well, because they're both humble creatures and they both try to do something that's out of their place, out of their character. And it's that connection that absolutely sells it. So it's subtle in Cromwell, and it's just kind of amusing in Babe.
Yeah, and I think, Cromwell can pretty much be summed up in his most famous line. The most famous line from the whole movie basically sums up his emotions throughout all of it. Is just, that'll do, pig. It's so simple, so perfect. And then the way that they end the movie is just with the two of them, standing out on a field in front of hundreds of people cheering. And then that's what he says. It's such a beautiful moment. And like you said, it's their connection. They're in this group of people, but they are separate. They're on a different plane. And I think that just goes like the storytelling in this movie is just so incredible. And there's so much depth and so many layers to it. All of the main characters show some kind of change throughout the movie. And I think that that's incredible. So many of the animals change. Like you said earlier, they're all kind of set in their ways. You said it's a little bit nihilistic. They've accepted their place in life and there's nothing that they can do about it. But Babe comes in and so many creatures, so many animals change how they see things. The dangerous wolves, the dogs, learn that they don't need to be that way and then they can still exist in their role. The role of this duck, which I think is one of the more fun characters, good old Ferdinand, being a rooster. Like, he kind of starts things. He's trying his best to be a rooster already, but because of Babe, he comes to believe that he actually can do this. Before, he was doing it out of necessity to survive. Then in the end, he's like, no, this is actually what I want to do. I can do it. Look at what Babe did. Look at what this pig is doing.
Like, I think the only animal to not actually do any changing is the cat, who's just an asshole the whole time.
I think also you could argue that maybe the sheep don't change, but the sheep are also shown as kind of like pure of heart, good characters from the get-go, so they don't need to change. They're just
they're the oppressed. They facilitate the change in the dogs.
Exactly. They are the oppressed, and then Babe is the one who like shows the dogs that they're doing the oppressing.
Although I do have to mention the voice of Fly, the mother dog to Babe, is Miriam Margolyes, who we'll know as that fabulous Italian lady from Chasing Liberty.
Really?
And, Professor Sprout from Harry Potter. But also, it's a Twin of a Cinema crossover, so we have to mention it.
That's amazing, because she's so good. I think her role is kind of one of the juiciest roles in the movie, really, because there's so much that happens with her character. She has to go through the loss of her children, and then finds Babe as a replacement, but she also can't really be on his side because they're too different. And then also there's like domestic abuse that happens in this movie amongst the dogs. It's just like there's so much going on in Babe, whereas Gordy just doesn't have any of that depth. It's all surface. They're not trying to do anything more. Babe just really draws you in, and I think that's why it works so much better for like a wider audience. It works for kids because you can follow the story very easily on the surface, but it also really hits home as an adult because look at how old James Cromwell is. He's not that old in the movie, but he's portrayed to be much older than he actually is. He's changing his ways that late in the game, and that's a beautiful thing. You don't have to be stuck doing the same thing that you've been doing forever. You can change at any point and do whatever your heart tells you to, and I think that's a hugely beautiful message that can resonate with people of any age.
And it's also beautiful because it never ever talks down to its audience, which is surely meant for children, which Gordy is kind of the equivalent of a fart joke, except with a pig.
Which I don't think are any fart jokes in the movie, which you think there would be because they're pigs, but I don't believe there was in either film. Way to go, both of you, for not going for that.
But I don't know, one thing was always curious to me growing up was the Australianness of Babe, which is just kind of fun to notice because George Miller, obviously from Australia, huge influence on Mad Max, but it never registered to me like, oh, it's not snowing for Christmas. It's like, oh, this is just in a different part of the world.
Yeah, and that never occurred to me either, because up until actually watching the movie this time around, I didn't think about that. And I think that's very, very much done intentionally, is just we kind of know where it is. They say that, but there's nothing too specific about it. It's just a farm, and a farm is a pretty universal thing. Everyone understands what a farm is. Everyone across the world has farms in different varieties and structures, but this farm is it's like your stereotypical small farm. And I find that to be very, once again, universal.
Going back to the Australianness of it, it's also just kind of tickles me because so much of this movie relies on ADR voiceover, and I think they had to do it to the humans too, because there's no way in hell the background performers in this movie didn't have raging Australian accents.
I gotta say that you're probably correct. I can't imagine that wouldn't have happened, but I think that was obviously very intentional for the same reason, to make it as universal as possible. They kind of just leave a lot of that out. Before I forget, though, I really just want to say something, and that is one of my favorite lines from the movie. It's spoken by Ferdinand, and it just absolutely cracks me up. It's because he realizes that Christmas involves the killing of some animal to feed the bosses. And then he's like, oh, Christmas means carnage. Christmas means carnage. I love it so much because from an animal's perspective, that makes perfect sense. That's what Christmas would mean to you. It means that somebody's gonna die.
Just the animal performers, the voiceover artists are great. It also tickled me. Babe was voiced by Chucky.
The killer doll? Chucky?
No, the Rugrat.
Oh, okay. that makes a lot more sense.
Yeah, Christine Cavanaugh did the voice for Babe, and she was also Chucky.
Well, I was gonna be blown away by his performance range if he could pull off, serial killer Chucky, and then also just flip the script and play this adorable little pig. But that what you said makes way more sense.
Although I wouldn't be surprised if Brad Dourif popped up in here, because half of the other cast members of Lord of the Rings come in here as well. Hugo Weaving is the voice of the dog, the male dog, Rex. And then Andrew Lesnie, the DP for Lord of the Rings, shot this movie. And I gotta assume that most of the other actors appeared as orcs or hobbits at some point in the future.
Oh, this had the same DP? That's awesome. I did not know that. One of the things that I gotta give Gordy a little bit of credit for is it does look good. Like, it doesn't look amazing. Babe looks incredible. They did a wonderful job shooting that movie. But Gordy, it looks pretty good. It's definitely shot better than Camp Nowhere. So there's a lot of things going on where that was one of the surprising things. I was like, okay, they spent money making it look good, but they forgot to write a better script. So
they're too busy writing the country songs.
It kind of feels a little bit like The Room in that way. Like The Room isn't the best cinematography that's ever happened, but the cinematography is way better than the content of the movie.
Well, if you couldn't tell at this point what our favorite and winner of this week's episode, it's Babe by a mile.
It's not even close. And honestly, we haven't seen Babe Pig in the City in a while, but I feel like that movie might be a little closer story-wise to Gordy, but not the same year. But even that, I imagine, is better than Gordy. I imagine it's better than Gordy by a lot, which is saying something.
I feel like Gordy was made with the mentality of, the Milo and Otis school of filmmaking, to where you just, throw the animals into the situation, see what they do, and add some voiceover later.
God, I hope it wasn't quite like Milo and Otis, because they killed a bunch of animals on the set of that movie.
Yep. Although with that, I have to imagine that Gordy was very well catered in that respect.
There's just lots and lots of pulled pork sandwiches on set every day, and nobody's asking questions. They're just like, they're serving a lot of pork on this movie.
No, this is week 1, Gordy. We're on week 5, Gordy now.
Which, speaking of, that was something I saw in the trivia for Babe. I think it was either 38 or 48 different pigs played Babe, because little baby pigs age so quickly that they had to switch out that many different pigs in order to keep this consistency, which is something that I'm sure if you really watch, you could maybe notice, but I had no idea. So well done, team.
So that ends another fantabulous and delicious episode of Twinema Cinema. We thank you for listening. Please like and subscribe. Hey, if you got the time, leave us a 5-star review on iTunes. We always appreciate it.
And please check us out on all of the social media platforms. We got Instagram at Twinema Cinema, Twitter at Cinema Twinema, and our Facebook page. Please like and follow, or is there a subscribe thing? I know it's mainly follow these days, but like and follow, and check out our social media pages where Max is generally killing it.
It's true.
No shame here, man. You are crushing our social media game. Thank you so much for joining us, and listen next time. I can't wait to talk to you about whatever it is Max and I are going to decide after this episode we're doing next.
Keep wearing a mask. We love you.
Especially you, North Dakota.
Up, up, down, down, left, right, BA, start! Join us next week as we take on the most fantabulous Christmas video game items of the 1995 movie season.